Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of the Bonus Points podcast. I'm your host Joe Garrett, as always being joined by Ollie Guy.
It feels weird to say hello because we're sitting together. Hello?
Hello? So, for those listening to audio, I should point out that for the video version, this is the first podcast that we are doing in person. We're in the same room. I can poke Ollie. Look, listen to him squirm. Proof. Undisputable proof. So we're doing basically it just ended up that the weekend we were going to record this, we ended up just being in person, and we're working out what should we do. Should we try and Ollie could use Kai setup or something. We're like, you know what? Our goal is in the future to do it in person. We'll do this as a bit of a test. So the room we're recording in, the setup we're using, this isn't like our end goal.
Yeah.
But we thought this is a game that I think we're both quite passionate about. We don't know whether each other liked it, but I think it'll be an interesting one. We thought this would be a nice test, not for like the tech, but mainly just for like how different is it just recording the podcast in person? How much of an effect does it make?
Yeah, I'm quite excited. I'm looking forward to it. I think it's going to be a cool episode. So at the end, remember I said that when you're like, it was or wasn't cool.
When like the audio messed up and we had to use the backup audio from my laptop, then we'll see how it ends up. It's been a day full of getting it sorted, but fingers crossed you won't need to worry about that. But what you will need to worry about is the game we are discussing today, which is a little game called Alan Wake 2.
Alan Wake 2, which was my choice in the end.
Yes, so it was a last-minute switch with Survival Kids, and if you haven't heard the announcement and you were expecting Survival Kids and you're devastated, you're going to have to wait 2 more weeks because we are still doing that, but we switched it around just because the release of this game kind of lined up perfectly to slot it in.
Yeah.
And seeing as it's still kind of the tail end of Halloween spooky season, we thought we'd put it in. This is a game we were both going to play anyway, so it just made a lot of sense.
It's slotted in like to the day, didn't it? Like came out the day we normally start playing the next game. So what's Alan Wake 2, Ollie? Well, according to Wikipedia, Alan Wake 2 is a 2023 survival horror game developed by Remedy Entertainment and published by Epic Games. Sequel to Alan Wake, the story follows best-selling horror novelist Alan Wake, who has been trapped in an alternate dimension for 13 years. So he attempts to escape by writing a horror story involving an FBI agent named Saga Anderson. The game was released for PS5, PC, Xbox Series X and S on the 27th of October. So not long ago, a couple of weeks. It received generally positive reviews from critics.
Well, we'll see whether we're among those. A few little warnings before we begin. First thing, not really a warning, but just to let you know, in case you didn't know, we did do a podcast on Alan Wake 1. So if ever there's a time to watch...
warning. Warning.
You better watch out. Well, it would be a warning because it'd be annoying if they watched this and they're like, oh, they did one on the first one. I should have watched them in the other order. So if you are curious about Alan Wake 1 or you were going to play Alan Wake 2, but you kind of wanted to play Alan Wake 1 first, maybe just listen to our podcast instead. So that's available. Other thing, spoiler warning, we're going to spoil the game. Basically, the game is a very heavily story game. We did discuss could we save the spoilers till the very end, but we just realized it would be too difficult to not spoil it. And then the other thing is just kind of like a graphic content warning. This is a very violent adult game. For the video podcast, I won't be choosing the most violent stuff, but that's just kind of what this game is. And so some of the topics we discuss, this will be one of the more mature ones that we've done.
You can't really talk around it, can we? So
same
as a spoiler, really.
And I don't think we should. I wouldn't want to do that. I've always considered that these would be super boring for a child. So they our way to stop children watching these is just by doing it in the way we do and be two blokes chatting really in depth about a game they probably haven't played. So that's the way we get around that.
True.
I think we need more than ever, because this is such a big game to tackle. I think we need a structure. And so what I was thinking...
Oh my God, okay. Whoa, okay.
I was thinking of maybe we should discuss mostly gameplay first and talk about that, and then just go into talking about story. Because otherwise I think this might turn in a little bit and remember this moment? Oh, and then there was this cool moment, and there won't be...
We've had problems with that before. When we did Killer 7.
Yeah.
That was also a complicated game, and we just jumped all over the place, and then turned out we missed one of the main points of the whole game by the time we finished recording it. So I think you're right. And
do you think that way around? Talk about gameplay first?
Yeah, I think we can do the gameplay overview that we always do.
Okay, do you want to do that?
Yes, let me just adjust my seat. Okay, so gameplay-wise, Alan Wake, should I just do the actual raw gameplay? Or should we come in from Alan Wake 1?
I think just discuss what it's like playing in.
Okay, so it's
Alan Wake 2,
not too far from Alan Wake 1, mostly. Walking around, solving some light puzzles, going around these environments in the woods or in the town or in New York in this case. And you fight enemies not that often, not as often as the first game, but the enemies you fight are pretty tough. And it's a third-person shooter, very similar to Resident Evil, if you played RE2 or 4. You basically have to use your torch to kind of melt the enemy's shields, and then you shoot at them with your gun. So that's like one half of it. And then the other half of it is you do like kind of investigation. Like if you've ever seen any detective show and they do the threads to like work out detective cases. And then there's also another board, which is like the plot. So you can create plot elements by putting things on this board and connecting them. They're the two kind of main... Would you say that's fair enough?
Yeah, I think. Are you talking about like for the plot stuff? This when you're playing as Alan Wake?
Yeah. So there's two different. So that's the other thing. There's two separate characters. You have Saga Anderson, who's an FBI agent. She has the detective agency kind of case board. And then Alan has what he calls his plot board, where he's basically writing a story. And he'll be like, okay, so I have this scene, which is a scene from the game.
And it's just like an area you're in. It'd be like the scene is like the hotel lobby.
Yeah, the hotel lobby, yeah. And then you'll be like, you'll have multiple plot points. You know, there could be characters or things. Like usually it's a murder. So then you put the murder into the scene, and then it will create this murder thing in front of you. That's kind of...
Yeah, and like instantly, so you'll be in the world, and then the thing that's crazy is, so you'll say if I'm there playing as Alan Wake, I'm in this hotel lobby, is you switch to his, like, the writing room, and so you just press the button, and he's just there. Like, there's not a load or anything, and so and it's all gameplay, not menus or anything, and you can walk around, and there's other things you can do there. Then you go to the plot board, and you'll be like, I'm going to put the murder there, and then you go into the game, and it'll do, like, a little overlay of him typing, which I love that sound. It's like, I like him typing, and then the world just goes... boom, and it just turns out, and it will physically change, like move, like a wall will be gone, or like suddenly there's like a body hanging from the ceiling. Content warning, I told you.
Well, it's kind of like he types it, and then as you imagine when he would shling the typewriter,
like he's finished that paragraph or whatever. Like it's quite impressive. I mean, artistically and technically. You know, I feel like when like the PlayStation 5 was first coming out, and they were all like, with the power of the SSD, and it was like
it's SSD big time, isn't
and
it?
it was basically like Ratchet and Clank did it and stuff, but like even that had like a little kind of loady thing. Like this has been the most impressive demonstration I've seen. I know Spider-Man 2 apparently has got very quick loads, but like it works so well in this. And if they did do a little cutscene, if it cut to the same thing where like it was like a little video of him typing full screen as they're loading in the background, I don't think it would be as striking, because it's like, you know, when you're seeing like a transition of like, oh, here's like they've improved the graphics, or they've remade this game, and they do a video and you're like, this is the old graphics, and then they cut to the new graphics. Like that's the best way to appreciate it. I feel like the fact that they're able to do that straight cut makes you realize how much the room's changed so drastically. And
also I feel like that particular, so basically Alan and Saga both have them. Alan's is definitely the better of the boards. I would say the detective board side, I did actually enjoy it. I've heard some people online saying they don't like it because it's like a sticker album, and it's like if you don't put it in the right place, it doesn't work. But I didn't mind it. I quite liked putting it out and kind of looking at the case. But yeah, Alan's one being fully interactive, really kind of something I noticed a lot in the game is it's really marrying together like analog and digital art. And obviously the typewriter being analog and then affecting this digital side of it. It's pretty cool. It's kind of like the perfect marriage of those two things.
Yeah, I am on the fence with the Saga side. So the way that works is, the way I thought it would be is like, you'd get to a situation where it's like, this person's died, you got to solve the murder, and you're working it out. But it's not really that. It's more of a way just to keep track of what has happened. It's like, oh, you found the key in the drawer, and then you put like literally a picture up on the board of, I found the key in the drawer, and like, what does that mean? And I think that it's done for almost everything you do. And so I think it can hurt the pacing. And then there was a time I run into, there's a bit you'll remember, where there's basically like a float, like as in like a parade float, and you need to get a bunch of items to put on. And I'd gone around the area where you'd get the items from, and I'd already seen when they were. And then when I found out I needed them, I was like, oh, I'll go get them. Mm-hmm. But first I had to find like a bit of paper that explained where you get them all from. Yeah, and I was sort of like, oh, I didn't need that, but I guess maybe in focus testing people got stuck. That's fair enough. But then I went to the item and like one of them was like a tape. And it didn't have an option to pick up the tape. And I was like, I had to go to the case board and put down, I need a tape. Yeah. But then I went back to the float to put the tape in, and there wasn't a prompt to put the tape in. I was like, I got to go to the case board. Like, I'm not working it out. It's just, you're making me have to go and do a thing. It's just like another step in between. That was it at its worst. But it did sometimes annoy me.
There is good for following the vast amount of plot threads and characters. It is really good for that, for keeping track. And like also kind of making sure that you're understanding what's going on.
Yeah.
Although if you do jump ahead and then open the case board, it will just fill itself in.
Yeah, if you've like not done it, it will be like, oh yeah, I've already solved this.
Yeah.
Go and do it. And also things, I like the way, because it kind of works in the story as well, and we'll discuss more about that later, but also just for like keeping track of like collectibles, like there's like hidden stashes that you have to like solve puzzles to open. And every time you get one, you'll put one on. And then there's other like puzzles as well. There's one we've got to solve like these nursery rhyme puzzles. And when you solve one, you put it up, or like a hidden lunchbox that you found, it will get put up. So I can imagine, say if you ask someone who's trying to get all of them, it makes it very easy. Say if you're looking up a guide, you can see which ones you've got. I found all of the ones from this area. I know not to look at anymore. But the fact that it's like a mind place where all of this is going on. The fact that they've tied that into the plot rather than just having like an achievements menu or something. I did appreciate that.
I didn't do many of the collectibles. I didn't collect really any. I didn't go out looking for stashes or. If it wasn't on the main path, I just didn't. Because I didn't feel like I ever needed anything extra. Like I had loads of ammo, loads of batteries.
It's just fun to get it. So I got all the stashes because I'm assuming I don't know if you have to get this, but I got a map that showed where they all were. Did you find that?
I think I might have got it, but I didn't bother chasing them down.
So once they were all marked on the map, like anytime I was passing, if I was anywhere near, I'd go out my way to get them. I didn't get all of the lunchbox or nursery rhymes. But like when you got, so there's a lot of times in the game where you're do the main thing in the area, you kill the boss or whatever it is, like the big event.
Yeah.
And then your mission will be like to go somewhere else. But you often after you've completed the main event, something will change. Like say an area that was flooded will drain, or a gate that was locked you can now go through, and then there's a whole other big area to explore. Did you at least do that?
I don't think so.
Oh, really? Because like say the first area.
What do you get there? Like 6 bullets or something?
Well, it's just a whole like another part of the game. Like so, say like the first bit in Cauldron Lake, for example.
Yeah.
Like after you go through the overlap, there's like a whole thing that you do, and then it's what I said, the flooding drains. There's just a whole new area of the map to explore.
Yeah, so it gives you for that one, it says to you, doesn't it, like, do you want to go back to the car, or do you want to? So I ran around for a bit, but I was like, I want to know what Alan's got to say, so I just left.
So like in like Watery, did you go to like the lighthouse or see any of those areas? Like
there's a lighthouse? I didn't do any of that.
Yeah, there's like all these puzzles that you could like solve in order to get up there. And stuff.
I mean, I had a wonderful time. I didn't do any. I just did Critical Path. Really, I didn't do any of that.
So that's actually I really enjoyed doing that stuff. Yeah. Like because I'm not normally a big fan of that. You mean I could even now we're in person, I could show you on my notes that I got a note saying that I really enjoyed going back to explore the areas afterwards, and because often there'll be like time has passed or something, or you now have. You know, at some point in the game, you get bolt cutters, and the whole way through the game, you've been seeing bolts everywhere. And I remembered, like, oh yeah, there was that place that was locked down at the seafront in like down by the water. I can now go to that place.
Oh yeah.
And then the little puzzles on the stash blocks. Some of them are actually quite fun. I
think the puzzles that are in the main game are also, considering they're almost all like 3 or 4 numbers, they're pretty creative and they're pretty good. There was like the one with the lottery numbers.
Yeah,
really near the beginning, which I struggled through, and then I died. And the second time I loaded it up, I got the prompt where she kind of explained what. Yeah. Whereas the first time I did it without the prompt.
I think I messaged you when I was doing that one, didn't I? But there's a cool one. Like there's an area where like the bit where you get your crossbow, and like there's like the stash, and it's basically. It's how many arrows are fired on the targets.
Yeah.
And I quite like that because it's quite an in-game thing and you're getting a crossbow, but then also afterwards you pick up those crossbows, pick up the crossbows as your ammo as well. And I thought that was quite clever.
And there was also the one, so basically what we're trying to say is the puzzles aren't like a wind howls, and you know to use the wind ring.
Yeah.
It's actually like you have to think about.
Or the puzzle isn't like get the equivalent of a key and put it into the thing. I mean, there are several times you need to get a fuse. They do.
Yeah, they do love the fuse.
Yeah, and you are doing generators. They do the horror survival game tropes.
Yeah.
What did you think of like the combat?
I thought it was pretty hard, but I have noticed that the game has been patched every day since it's been out, including lowering the difficulty.
Every day they've lowered it by one notch.
The first boss, especially, I've noticed in patch notes has been like, we've made your gun more powerful. And another day it's like, we've made the encounter easier.
Yeah.
Because that first boss fight was rock hard.
We cut off his leg.
We got him. Yeah. He's not in anymore.
He's a squirrel now.
Yeah, I kind of felt like with the combat encounters as well, it wasn't so much like, oh yeah, I can fight through and maybe make this. It was like, if there's more than 3 enemies, it's like, well, I'm just done. Like, I need to restart this.
So one of the things this game forced me to do, so Ollie and I kind of have like this running thing, mainly from Blood Brothers, our playthrough of Bloodborne, is that I never use consumables. Yeah. And this game so I realized at one point of the game, I ran out of inventory space in both my space and your like the shoebox. Yeah, your I didn't have any, and so I was like, I got to start using this stuff just to clear out rooms so I can hoard more stuff. But then once I realized that, because it does the thing where it's like an enemy comes, you have to shine the light at them first and then shoot them. But then of course you've got like flares and flashbangs and stuff. And I feel like that is the way to deal with groups. There's like flares and things. Like even just doing a flare dropping at your feet so you can heal, and then they're all like covering their eyes. Like I feel like the game the balance has really been designed with the idea that you're using everything in your toolkit.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And if you're shining your light and shooting your pistol, like you haven't got a chance.
They're too fast. Yeah, they're not like Resident Evil enemies that like kind of lurch towards you. They'll be like, oh, there's an enemy on the other side of the room, and it will like teleport directly in front of you.
Yeah, and
also they don't just swing once and then like basically fall over.
Yeah, they do little combos.
Now they do like combos, so because you have a dodge button, so you're literally like weaving out of the way of the enemies. And there's also a few more enemy types, not that many more over the first one, but there is a few more.
Yeah, I really liked the reflection enemy.
The double one.
Yeah. Do you want to kind of describe, because it's kind of
it's
tricky
like
thing to
imagine
describe.
a person that is waist deep in water, and instead of their legs, it's just the top half of their body like reflected underneath again.
Yeah,
and they look so weird. When
is there a special way to kill them? Are you meant to like headshot both? While I just fought them like normal.
To be honest with you, I pretty much killed. I didn't even go for headshots. Most enemies, I was just blasting them, like to keep them away from me as much as I possibly could.
Your gameplay looks like Doom. It's like
literally. There was a counter I did where I had over 100 pistol rounds, and I literally was just firing them off.
I'm not crazy impressed that you got 100 pistol rounds.
It was the the big musical by the lake near the end.
Oh, on the beach, yeah.
And then you can kind of pick up I ran around and got all the bullets, and I had a fight after that. And I was like, I've got 150 pistol rounds now. So
I did find, I thought that Alan Wake sections were often more difficult because he has like a revolver that has like 6 shots.
Yeah.
And like Saga, the other character, you can upgrade it so she has like 18 bullets or something.
I got that upgrade, yeah.
Yeah, so I'd be caught reloading a lot with Alan Wake, and then that's when I'd get caught out.
Did we mention the other mechanic that Alan has where he can like transfer light?
No.
So you basically, if there's a room that's like in darkness, you can like take the light from one room with this like little lamp he's got, and then kind of throw it into another area. And then when you do so, that area will change and show something. Maybe a wall will disappear, or the room will, just kind of look different generally. That was pretty cool and has a really satisfying noise.
Yeah, once again, the sound is fun. I felt like they never did anything other than the obvious with it. It was always like, oh, if I do it in this place, it will get rid of the wall or create a door. I was never like, they never got to a situation where it's like, oh, if I take that light from there and put it there, but then I'll need to like get it from there. Like, I feel like it was not half-baked, but I always felt like, oh, they were teaching me this mechanic to set up for something. Yeah. But it just became like another way to just progress a bit further.
Yeah, and I also always had loads of lights, because you can save them.
Yeah, you're just.
I always had one extra, and I don't know where I picked it up from.
Yeah.
And I was just carrying it through the whole game. The whole time I had one extra.
Yeah.
Cool mechanic though. Like a lot of the mechanics in this game, they have kind of a build up to something where you're kind of like tensing up and you're like, oh, what's going to happen? Like, for example, the typewriter, obviously you're waiting for it to change. And then the light, you're kind of waiting for it to, because it takes a little while to throw into place. And those sorts of moments, they did it every single time, have me like, oh no, like I don't want to know what's going to happen. Because I found this game really scary.
Yes, absolutely.
I think this might be the best horror game I've ever played, maybe ever made. Action horror is one thing. That's like Resident Evil. It's completely different to that. This is so much more horror based.
Okay, that's what I was going to say, because I know, like, isn't Resident Evil like your favourite game?
Yeah, but Resident Evil is so different. Like when you're playing Resident Evil Village, it's not like this.
But like Resident Evil 2 Remake, this is probably close to that.
I think this is better than that.
No, I mean like in terms of the style of the game.
In terms of style of the game, yeah. This game was just really scary. Like it's apart from we talked about before, like when I was younger and I had to stop playing Silent Hill 3 because I was too scared. This is the first game in probably 20 years that's made me be like, I have to stop playing. And then I left it for like 3 days because I was so scared.
I thought I wasn't as bad as you. I
just found it really affecting and horrible. It was the drowning woman was where I was like, when you're walking through the tunnels, I was like, I've had enough. Like I can't go through the loops anymore. Yeah, I think I showed you I had a note about that particular moment as well. So there was 3 moments that really scared me. There was the well that we talked about in person, which was there's a part where you climb up out of a well, and then when you turn around and look at it again, it's just completely full of blood. And I was like, oh my God, that's horrible.
They do a flash jump scare.
Yeah, they love doing it.
Moment.
We'll get to those in a second. Yeah. Then there was the drowned woman, and the last one was receiving the plot point for Alan that I could put in a scene. That was the devil. I was like, I don't want to put it in. I don't want to see it. Like, I don't want to know what's going to happen when I put that in.
You're like, I'm going to write my own one. Kittens, fluffy kittens.
Literally, like
the game's like dead kittens.
I was literally playing the game, going like, oh God, like, oh no.
And the thing that made it worse for me is that. So a lot of the time when I was playing, Kai was in the room as well, but like just chatting on Discord or editing a video or something. So I actually played a lot of this game with like headphones on and like proper like over-ear noise cancelling headphones. And the first time I did that, especially in an Alan Wake section, because they have... So the enemies that you face when you're playing a Saga look very similar to the ones in Alan Wake 1. They kind of just look like humans with like a smoke around them. Mm-hmm. And then when you're playing as Alan Wake, they kind of just look like shadows, and there'll be a lot of them, but only a few of them will actually attack you. Most of them are just there, and as you walk past, they might go like Alan Wake or something. They
go like Wake. That's
And then but if you walk through them, they just fade away and they don't attack you. So, but you never know which ones are going to attack you or not. So you could shine your light at all of them, but you've only got a certain amount of batteries and your torch.
Yeah, and it's not like, oh, that one might attack me, and it starts going like, ooh, like they will literally just be there, and then they'll just grab you and throw you on the floor, and it's like alarming. Yeah. And then it's over you with like a crowbar, and you're like trying to roll away. Like,
so going through that area, like walking through like New York, and then I got my headphones on, and then Jenny like Wake, and it's like it sounds like it's someone behind me. That, and like the spatial audio was. I mean, the sound design. The fact that we've mentioned a few times how satisfying the sound is. Like every aspect of like the audio like soundscape is incredible in this game, and I think is a big reason for why it's so great, but also like why it's so scary. Well,
yeah, I mean, like if you're watching the video version or you've seen the game, like it looks amazing visually. I'd say it's equally as good in audio terms as well.
Yeah,
like they are together. Like, yeah, and the game looks so good that it has quite a lot of real life actors in it that are kind of blended into the game, or like they cut to them. But like it's almost at the point where it's indistinguishable when it cuts, or like
I wouldn't say the faces get that. I mean, like it looks great. Like there's better looking faces. For me, it's more the environment.
Well, also they mocapped everything, so like even when you're talking to someone in the world, their face is mocapped.
Yeah, but I do think that there are better facials. It's more because obviously most of the time you're in the third person view and the environment. So like the lighting is incredible, and like so we both played on console on PlayStation 5. But I was looking up videos on PC because it's got full ray tracing. And it's incredible. So it's their own engine, the Northlight engine.
Yeah.
And like, so I was watching, I think it was Digital Foundry's video. They were showing about like, basically, the way of ray tracing is it's basically kind of as if it's doing the light bouncing. And it basically is doing more bounces than what most games do, which means so things like, say if there's like a little like blue bowl, the way like it would like spread out a blue light between it. And then also one of their examples was, those like kind of curved security mirrors that you'll get in like a corner of a room, is they were showing that like it is tiny in the corner on the gameplay, but they zoomed in and you can see, not only can you of course see Alan Wake, who's realistically, like his proportions match what you'd expect he's all warped just because it is really doing it. You can also see the light he's shining and the shadows that light is casting in the reflection. And like you'd never notice, but like, I mean, that's obviously like a silly example because that wouldn't affect it when you're playing, but that just shows how realistic the lighting is. But that would affect everything because light is obviously so important to this game.
Yeah, they couldn't really like escape out on it because they had to like, you really had to go for it when it, because light and dark is the main theme of the game.
Yeah.
You couldn't be like, oh, we'll just half do it. Like they had to really go for it, which I think they did.
Yeah, and they also, the thing that I was moaning about is they didn't sacrifice on how reactive the world is. Like everything's got physics. If you shoot a box, it will break apart, or things will fall over and stuff. And when the wind blows, everything moves. Because normally games
even paper blowing off the street.
Yeah,
like it's a like enemy walking through it because obviously they're otherworldly. The paper around them is like lifting up.
Yeah,
even stuff like that. It's just a really.
I was curious because obviously Control was like the master of that. Like, you know, you shoot a window and the way they crowd, like a desk, you can break it apart gradually and it will fall down, like, because that was a super physicsy game because you're like, you know, telekinesing objects around. So I was curious how much they would be able to bring across to that. And it's not to the same level, but it doesn't need to be. But the fact that it looks as good as it does, I was playing on performance mode and it was staying above 50 FPS the whole time. Like it was, most of the time it was locked 60. I did have a few drops. I do know that the PS5 version does run a little worse than the Xbox Series X, apparently.
I played it in quality mode.
Oh, really? How was that?
Quality. I mean, it also had frame drops as well. It was running at 30, and I think it would drop into like 25 every so often. It
was rare. It was rare for performance mode.
The other thing we haven't touched on with the effects and graphics and stuff is like the way things kind of phase in and out of existence with this like kind of oil slick looking smoke effect.
What?
So, like, you know, like when a door's blocked and you got to shine your torch on it, it kind of has this kind of smoky oil slick.
Yeah, or the audio design of like popping those things was great.
Yeah, so that's just like, it just looks incredible. And also walking into dark areas, you kind of also get, like if it's an area you're not supposed to go to, you kind of get that oil slick over your screen.
Oh, yeah. You know, like the whole turn back, I'm not meant to go this way. Yeah, like that.
The dark place won't let me go that way. That's what he says.
Yeah, just your audio and visual masterclass. And you touched on it earlier, but the FMV stuff, the stuff that's filmed with live, like people, actors.
Yeah,
like there's a lot of times where that, like sometimes they're just playing a full screen video and it just looks like a TV show.
Yeah, but
the way it's merged into the game is really good. There's some bits, mainly I think exclusively as you're playing as Alan Wake, where there's kind of like two orbs that you need to line up. Oh, yeah. And then it will play like a little scene in game. But it looks incredible. Like often you almost just see like a silhouette and maybe a little bit of like the character's face but the way it fits into the world and the way it does the perspective, like it just looks like I was in awe.
Yeah. It's the same thing as I was saying with the like marriage of analog and digital forms. Like what I thought you were going to say is the in-game projectors.
Oh, yeah.
Which you could walk in front of and have what's supposed to be projected on your back.
Yeah.
I don't even know how they're doing that. Like,
yeah, and the way it walks around, and then it obviously would cast the perfect shadow.
Cast the perfect shadow, yeah. Yeah, but no, I really like that about this game. Like, that theme in particular, I feel like runs through it. The amount of different things that they're doing, like, we're doing videos, we have music, we have stuff that's supposedly printed on, I know it's in a game, but printed stuff out. We've got projectors, we've got, like, photography, like, every art form is, like, in here, like, digital or analog. They've managed to squeeze it all in.
It's a game about art. Like that is like one of the main themes of the game. Is it's obviously there's like this dark presence, and we will get into the story a bit more soon. But like this dark presence is obsessed with art.
Yeah,
and so the fact that they got all of these different mediums together, you know, the only medium that isn't really tackled in the story is video games. Ironically, but I guess that's
well. There is a note from Barry Wheeler. I don't know if you read it, where he's like, they want to turn Alan Wake into a video game? I told them, of course not. Of course you can't do it.
What a bad idea. That would never work out. Any issues with the gameplay or problems you ran into?
Yeah, so the only thing that I struggled with was there's to change between the two main characters, you have to go to a bucket to basically look at the puddle on the floor and then you change to the other character. I don't know if I just missed what was going on with this, but I assumed that because it was a bucket, there was going to be buckets everywhere, so I could change whenever I wanted. And then I ended up accidentally not changing when I think it thought I should have changed. So I did 2 in a row as Saga, got to the end of her storyline, and it was like, you can't, if you go here, you can't go back. You can't, it's a endgame gate. So I was like, well, no, that's fine then. I'm not going to do it. And then I reloaded my save, went and did as Alan's final part, only to find out afterwards that you can't miss it. And if I had pushed through a Saga, it would have forced me to do Alan's first. But then I ended up playing that Saga chapter twice because I had to go back to where I was.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I just missed that or it was miscommunicated. I just didn't understand. So the whole bucket system, I would have just had it as a button in your mind place or something.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing is there's seems to be a lot more places on Saga's side to switch to Alan. Whereas, because the sections where you're playing as Saga, who I guess we mentioned a little bit, she's like an FBI agent who's kind of come to investigate some murders. So she's, I guess, the closest thing to a straight sort of outsider character. She's the one you might relate to most at the beginning, who's gonna, although she takes it all running. She's not.
Yeah. She takes it on the chin.
She doesn't seem fazed by anything that's going on. So her sections tend to be a little bit more open world than Alan Wake's, I think. And so there'll be, in each area, there'll be multiple rooms where she can kind of switch to Alan, not so many going back. Maybe I think I just got quite lucky. I kind of just did a mission from one and then switched.
Well, that's what I thought I was doing. It was only when I realised that she was one ahead. I was like, I must have missed a bucket somewhere without realising. And
I think that maybe... I don't think there's enough opportunities to switch back. The game, I don't think, from the point where you can switch is long enough that it matters enough. I can imagine if the game was another 10 hours or something, maybe. But and the only type of thing I can really think about it is maybe you're oh, I'm playing as Alan Wake, but I want to go and get some collectibles or check out something rather than be oh, I'm just going to halfway through my mission as Alan start playing the mission as Saga. I don't know who would ever want to do that.
That's why I was thinking they probably didn't allow it, and also because they don't want you to think that a puzzle that you're stuck on as Saga can be solved if you're playing as Alan. Yeah. So maybe they made it oh, this is very direct points. But the points aren't that easy to find either. Saga's one, the only one I think I ever used was the one in her cabin.
There's one at the entrance to Watery as well. There's another one I used. Right. They're shown on the map.
Yeah.
So you can.
I've never used the map that much.
Oh, really?
No, because also some of them I wouldn't have the map. So
yeah.
But I didn't have any trouble running around. It's
and the map's not the best map.
Yeah.
So some areas it's easier than others to work out, but some areas the hotel and stuff, it's a bit confusing sometimes.
I did have to use it to always find my car.
Oh yeah,
I was always I don't know where's the car park.
It's because you don't drive. You're not used to remembering where you park. I always remember to take a mental note where it is.
Well, she parks her car not near the sheriff station.
I know. She parks
near streets down.
Well, she parks near the hotel they're staying in. Yeah. I guess. But I did actually have a little problem when I left the police station. Go to your car. I was like, oh yeah, it's down by the seafront. That did make me laugh. Well, I did notice that. Sometimes, so you would have your quick select where you could switch between items. So some of the utility stuff I said about, there's basically 3 main weapons that you get, a pistol, shotgun, and a rifle, and sometimes variants. The flare gun is back.
Yeah.
And I was really happy when that showed up again. That made me happy. And you do a lot of switching between them because the reloads are so slow. The rifle, you're loading every bullet in, or the revolver, as I said. I found that sometimes when I'm rapidly switching, the game just wouldn't handle it, or it would get and I don't know, maybe it's just because there's a bit of a delay and it was me messing it up. But then a few times it did actually bug. So in the big fight you mentioned where you're down by the water, which is a really cool fight, the things that you throw on the ground and then shoot to blow up, they weren't working for me.
What are those?
The propane tanks.
Oh, I never used those.
Oh, so it's a little grenade-y thing you throw on the floor and then you shoot and it blows up.
Oh, okay. I think I picked one of them up and I thought it was a flashbang and I just never used it.
It's a little red bottle.
I don't think I ever got them.
Oh, okay.
Oh no, I did get them and I never used them. I remember having 2 stacks and I was
changed places.
I know.
Really? I was using them to open doors.
Yeah.
Do you want a cup of tea? Yeah, let me heat that up for you. Put it on my propane tank.
Yeah, I don't think I ever used them. I had a lot of bugs as well. buggy things.
So that didn't work. Then I also had times when I'd switch and it would be like I'd have my gun out and then it would be like hold R2 to ignite flare, and I'm like, well, I've got my gun out. And it always seemed to be the problem is it only happened in the really intense fights because I'm rapidly switching, and then that's when it would mess up. And I nearly, for those watching the video, you'll see like I nearly failed that water section on my first go because of it. And I'm really glad I didn't, because it was a good cinematic moment. And if I had to redo it would have really hurt. But it actually ended up making it so that I made that section almost dead and out of bullets. I fired my last bullet and then I had no health, and I managed. So it ended up making it more dramatic because it made it harder, because not only was it not working that was bad, I was wasting loads of time trying to make it work while getting punched in the back. I'm like, light!
I had quite a lot of bugs. At one point I got stuck on the caseboard. Couldn't leave the caseboard.
Oh, really?
No matter what I pressed, couldn't get out. I had the drowning woman boss fight. I was trying to, you're supposed to stay out the water.
Yeah.
So I was trying to do that during the boss fight, which I then realised you didn't have to do. But every time I stepped up onto something slightly higher than ground level, I was just like rapidly going up and down, falling over.
It's really normally these sorts of games, if there's anything like above your ankle height, you can't walk on it.
Yeah.
On this one, there's be like a big rock you just walk over. Like it's really and it looks really goofy. But it's, I think maybe because this is come from Control, which is a big movement game. Like it's weird how you kind of glitch your way over things. Like that.
And I had a lot of changing weapon bugs, or things just don't seem to I want to pick something up and it just doesn't register. Lots of small things like that. Nothing game breaking though. Yeah. Oh, actually no, the caseboard one I guess kind of is. Because I had to go out and go back in.
Yeah, no, that sounds bad. And then the other little kind of issue, and these are basically literally all of my gameplay issues, is that so you're doing a lot of opening boxes and drawers and stuff, and a lot of the times, ammo would be right at the front of the drawer.
Oh, you can't see it.
And sometimes you just don't know it's there. Then on my map it will show oh, there was a flare. Then I was like, where? And I was like, oh, tucked in here. And then, but then it's I'm really trying to maneuver around and really turn my camera pointing up. So and I'm like, how does that get past it? And I realize what it is. It's because I think it randomizes the position. Because I sometimes open a drawer and it was glitching.
Do you not think maybe it might be a physics thing? You pull the drawer and it slides forward, then stops.
I doubt it. No, because I think they seem quite locked in place. I think it just randomizes an XY position or an XZ position on where it will be in the drawer. And sometimes you just you can't get it. Yeah. It's such a weird thing to do. I actually had a funny comparison because there's so much attention to detail in for the cinematic areas and stuff. And I feel there was more care put on that because I was that's a thing you're doing the entire game, and that problem constantly came up. But then when you're in the elevators, when you're pressing what floor to go to, he presses he does a different animation to press the right button.
Right.
And I'm it shows where their priorities are.
Yeah,
they get that specifically right.
So other games don't even lift their arm.
Yeah,
they just look at it, it's bing. Great.
Yeah, the best you'll get that.
Yeah.
It's let me pass you this item, and then it's just they cut to a wide or something.
I feel we're being a bit negative.
Well, that was the section for negative, and I did point out that was it. We're done from negatives now.
Okay, so should we talk about the story and things?
Yeah,
instead?
let's talk about
that's the good stuff.
We'll talk about gameplay.
That's the meat of it. Yeah,
let's get into some of the moments.
Oh, this game has so many moments.
It's full of moments.
Yeah, the cold opening. That's what they call it, right? When it's a shock opening.
Mm-hmm.
That was fantastic. I mean, incredibly violent. Where I was oh, we're doing something different now to Alan Wake 1.
Yeah, apologies, video viewers. You won't see.
Yeah,
you won't really see any of this, I'm afraid.
Basically, it's a cult murder is the opening, and it's quite shocking because they don't really ever cut away. They kind of just show you.
Yeah, I think describe the opening shot.
Yeah, so it's you play as a guy that's crawling out of the lake naked, and he's middle-aged dude, and then you kind of limp around. You see some kids, and they're oh my god, who's that? Maybe they throw a rock at you, I can't remember. But anyway, you go and you come across these cult members, and they throw you on a table and tie you to the table, and then basically rip your heart out while you're still alive.
Yeah.
And that's the opening section, and that's what I instantly text my friends who are not really into horror games. I was oh, just so you know, Alan Wake 2 is quite a lot more extreme than the first one. I didn't say what it was, but I was it's definitely more extreme than the first game. Yeah, I mean, that's a great moment. The moment when Alan comes out the lake, it's a great moment. We can't list off.
We don't need to list off. I think some of the openings are a good thing because that was the time when I realised, oh yeah, this is Alan Wake 2, but this is different. Like Alan Wake 1 is very campy. It's much more of like an action game with some horror themes.
Exactly,
But like they amp up like the comedy, and the bits that go dark don't go anywhere near as dark. When I started this, I was like, oh, they're serious now.
Yeah, they are serious. And also, in terms of it being dark and scary, there is these just random jump scares through the whole game. Relentless jump scares.
Yeah, what did you think about those?
I don't mind them. They're over in a second. And it's quite fun to be scared.
There's too many of them.
There is quite a lot of them.
So when
Some scenes will have 2 or 3.
So when we say jump scares, we don't mean like something in game jumping out the cupboard.
Yeah.
We mean you walk into a room and then they flash up a face going rah.
Yeah.
And then
well, it's much more scary and effective than that.
Oh really?
Yeah. Blah.
That was my.
It's like a real video of an actor that's like got blood all over them, and there's someone from the game as well. So someone.
But sometimes it just I swear it's just like. You know, there's in like Left 4 Dead, they have like the AI director who's like, oh, they've got too much health, don't give them health. I feel like it's like they got an AI director, but they just get bored, or like they lean on their keyboard and they're like, jump scare now. It's like, why now? Like, nothing's going on.
Yeah, like it didn't really have that effect on me where I was like always tense waiting for a jump scare either. They would kind of just happen. I'd be like, oh,
yeah,
and then fine again.
Because the problem is a lot of the times, like sometimes they would get me, but they would be at the times that you said about like the well, where I'm like, oh, this is creepy, and there's like a scary thing ahead of me, and I'm edging forward, and I hear a whisper, and then it does it, and like, oh my god, okay, yeah, like that, and that kind of broke me. But then, like some of the times it would be like, oh, I've just started playing as this character, and I'm walking into an area, and they just do it straight. Where it's like, oh, but I'm not even settled in my seat yet. Like I've got my cup of tea, you know, like I'm not, you know, you gotta woo me first, game. You know, you can't take me to dinner first. You can't begin the scene with that jump scare. You got to build up the tension.
Opening of the game with the guy getting murdered, I think there's actually quite a few jump scares even in that section, isn't there? Right at the beginning.
Yeah, probably.
And it's Alan. Alan is the face that comes up at the beginning.
Yeah, there's a lot of them is Alan.
Alan.
You know he's like Alan. Still got over the name, have you?
Yeah,
he's called Alan.
Although the opening's actually really cool, where it says like Alan Wake.
Oh,
dude.
yeah.
It's like this crazy sound effect.
All of those titles, like when it goes to like a new chapter, because it doesn't do the text on screen immediately. You'd always play for a bit and then it will pop up.
Yeah.
And like once again, the audio design and just even like the font, and like often it'll be like in red text or something, and like that was like very effective. Like this game is overflowing with style, and like
unbelievable
of a very specific style as well. Like there's a lot of games that are stylish, but this has like quite a thin line of style, and it's got loads of style, but always fits within the thin lane or the parameters it sets.
Yeah, it looks amazing, and also the fact they can carry that style off between the gameplay and the video stuff.
Yeah,
like the film stuff is just like pretty amazing. Real single creative vision vibe from this.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is just crazy. I mean, there's so much to talk about. I'm thinking about like the plot.
Well, let's go through it, and then we'll pick up bits. So, as I said, the setup of the game, and this is when, if you've listened up to here and you're thinking, oh, I want to play this game, and you haven't yet, now's your time to get out of here, because this is where things might get a bit more spoilery. But so the setup is there's been all of these murders in Bright Falls, which is where Alan Wake 1 is set, and Alan within the world has gone missing. We know from the end of Alan Wake 1, he's in the lake, basically. He's inside the dark presence. And
dark place.
The dark place, sorry, where the dark presence is. A lot of light, a lot of dark, Bright Falls, you know. So she shows up to solve these murders, and then she's got a partner as well, Casey, who we've not mentioned. And so Casey's quite unique.
So he is he's played by the director of the game, or his face scan is the guy who actually writes the Alan Wake franchise. Sam Lake. Who
is famous because he's the face for Max Payne in 1 and 2.
And Alex Casey is voiced by the guy that voices Max Payne. So he's got Max Payne's face and his name. And he says things like, it's just a coincidence I look like that other detective.
Yeah. Anyway, you got to collect those pain pillars. Pain pills.
So that's also quite a big part of it, is following this Alex Casey character around New York.
Yeah.
And he is featured on billboards and stuff because he's also the creation of Alan Wake. In the game, he wrote Alex Casey as a story. And some of the billboards that feature Alex Casey look like Max Payne artwork.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And the names of Cold Day.
Just that whole New York setting.
Is it like Cold Day in Hell is one of the Max Payne chapters, and it's also the name of one of the Alex Casey books.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And that's the other thing about this game is that all the characters are kind of named after what they do. So Alex Casey looks at cases, and he says things like, "Oh, this Casey's closed."
You got 5 seconds to work out what Mr. Door is about.
Yeah, Mr. Door, Saga Anderson, Alan Wake, he's waking up, loads, except for Artie.
Yeah. I think it's just a Nordic name.
Yeah, so and it is quite on the nose and stuff like that. Like Tor and Odin are two characters who are like these old rockers, but they live in like Valhalla nursing home, and it's like I like it. I quite like all that.
Well, I think the thing is because the whole point is like you never know how much of the world as it is because that's how the world is, or because that's how Alan has written it to be.
Yeah. So we have to actually explain that. So he's writing the story as the game is going on. So he's writing what's going to happen, and the reason it's bad and he's not just writing like, oh, it's a romance novel, is because he has to stay within the genre confines of horror. Yeah, so he couldn't just suddenly write and then everyone became a millionaire because that would, and because it's got to be a horror story, so there's got to be a sacrifice for the hero. You know, there's certain parameters. That's what I was saying about how this game is so obsessed with fiction. Like this dark presence really cares about the sanctity of good storytelling. Yeah, it's funny they picked Alan to do it, but but that's the thing. Was there's a lot of when there is some of the tropey stuff. You're like, is that because he wrote it? Because one of my favorite moments in the game, actually, and it's a very minor moment, is when you're playing as Saga. So after she's basically investigating the opening scene that Ollie told you about earlier. And so she goes to a diner and she interviews the people that saw it. Yeah. And then she goes to speak to the person working at the diner. And she's like, oh, like, hey, Saga. And she's like, oh, like, I don't know you. And like the person recognizes her. And then she's like, basically says that, oh, you used to live here and your daughter died here. And she's like, no, I didn't. And at first, Saga's sort of like, oh, no, she's crazy. But then more and more people talk to her like that they know her, or like, oh, yeah, I'm your grandfather. And she's like, what? And then basically it's because in the other world, Alan Wake is writing this all to be true. And you never know for like, how deep is it getting to how much is the world that has changed? Or then she even is like, wait, is that what is the truth and what the world was before? Is that what he wrote? And they never explain exactly where that line is. Yeah, I feel like maybe in this game more than the first game, they do kind of play their hand a little bit early with that stuff. Because like, I remember in the first game wondering if these things were happening because he was writing them all the way up to the end of the game. I remember saying about like characters in it being like, well, he wrote them, so but it was never really confirmed. But then that game exists, and so like this game really feels like it's made for people that played Alan Wake 1. You definitely have to play. Yeah, and I know a lot of the games they're scared to do that because they don't want to tell people that. But this game, it feels like it's made with the assumption is like, yeah, you've played that and probably Control as well. I feel like the push and pull of like Saga being like, is Alan writing the future so he's guilty, or is he predicting the future so he's innocent? And they kind of wrap that up a bit too quickly, because I was like, oh, the idea that he's predicting the future is actually really interesting, and that would make him innocent. He's not causing these deaths. He's not writing her daughter into the story. He's just predicting what's going to happen. But they kind of wrap that up, I think, literally by the time you meet Alan. It's like... Well, they have it... I don't know if this could even too far forward, because there's another inverted commas character called Scratch, or Mr. Scratch. I think just Scratch. Scratch, yeah, Scratch. Which is basically like seems to be, it's presented as, oh, this is the dark version of Alan Wake. Yeah. And he's writing as well. And so for the bad stuff that happened, I was like, oh, Scratch is writing the bad stuff, and then Alan is trying to change. You know, Alan will write something and Scratch will scratch it out. Once again, it's don't think too hard about these names, guys. It's right in front of you. And so that's the way I kind of thought about that. Yeah, I think, I mean, you are right. Also, Scratch copy is like another, it's what they call a draft version of something. It's like, oh, is that the Scratch copy? But yeah, he, I don't know, maybe we could talk about how similar this is to Twin Peaks, because it's kind of mental. Well, so at first, when I first saw it, I was like, oh, it's the dark version of him. Yeah. But there is a twist with him that I think we probably don't need to spoil, just in case, where it kind of, it is not as straightforward as, oh, there's the good word and the bad word. I think it's actually more clever and interesting than that. That part where they're like, oh, Scratch is already out, did that twist get you at all?
Oh, what, that was the one on the beach?
Like, it seemed pretty clear to me that he was... It's like, okay.
Because you're still playing as Alan Wake. And they have a little line like, oh, I thought that was you from the past. I was like, they have a sort of, like, I saw that one. I mean, that was actually when I was saying about, like, it's annoying that we can't talk about the game because there's been loads of theories that I had, and if they come true...
Yeah. Okay, the theory... I had a theory that I laid down pretty hard, and I didn't turn out to be 100% right. But basically, my theory was that the game was going to end, and it was going to turn out that Casey and Alan were the same person.
Okay.
Which didn't turn out to be the case, but there is a line in it where Casey says, "You're not in the dark place. I am your dark place." And I was like, okay, so I'm kind of right. There's a part where he shoots him in the alley.
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember. That was my main theory going in. That I was like, oh, it's going to turn out they're the same person.
Yeah. Can we talk about the first time you play as Alan Wake?
Yes, you might have to remind me, but yes.
So it's the talk show, right? The first time.
Yes, of course. Yeah, the immortality style. You go into the video, I'm standing there.
Yeah, so you'll be the whole time. You'll be. So what was when it first cuts to Alan Wake? Is it just a straight cut after a chapter, or do they do a thing?
No, you're in the writers' room looking at.
But how does it get to there? Does it just? Oh yes, one thing we should mention is at the end of each chapter it plays a song, like it did in the original. But these are all original songs based on
about Alan Wake.
About Alan Wake. So they're all based on poems that Sam Lake wrote, and then like different artists kind of did renditions of their song. So does it just play one of those songs and then it cuts to Alan Wake in kind of the green room?
I think so, yeah. I think he's in the green room.
Yeah, then do you want to say what happens?
Yeah, then you there's a TV with Alan looking out the TV at you, which is like every time it happens, it creeped me out. I don't know why. He's intensely staring at you.
Real Alan, like the human actor.
And then you zoom in, you hold X on it, you zoom into it, and then it changes to this video where he then goes out onto a talk show to talk to this guy called Mr. Dorr.
Yeah, or once again, all real
life, yeah. And then while he's there, Alex Casey, his character that he wrote, is also there with him, and he's talking to him like, "Oh yeah, I wrote this character, and he looks exactly like I expected him to," which is kind of this whole like meta fiction craziness that like is probably. We can't fully go into it because it would be another hour of talking. Yeah. But it's basically like...
And a lot of theory crafting as well. Like none of it's fully explained.
It's basically like Alan is a stand-in for the director of the actual game who wrote Max Payne, and Max Payne's stand-in is Alex Casey, so therefore they're kind of meeting for the first time.
Yeah.
And it's almost as if, as you're playing as Alan, you're almost being haunted by Alex Casey through all of your New York sections, which might be how they felt at Remedy with Max Payne hanging over them. Mm-hmm. And also there's a lot of comments that are made about how Max Payne 3 was not made by them. And they're like, oh, someone else took it, and like I didn't know what they did, or I wish I could have been a little bit more involved. It's all kind of following his career.
Yeah, so we should explain is, so Remedy, who made this game, I don't know who mentioned that, so they basically sold the rights to Rockstar, who made Max Payne 3, podcast on that, on the channel as well, coincidentally. We have our niche. And so obviously they couldn't have Max Payne in the game. That's why, we don't know whether they would have had Max Payne.
Yeah.
I think they would have in some way.
Yeah, I think they would have as well.
Yeah, so so it's kind of cool that's like in the background kind of become one of the plot points kind of subtly, at least one of the themes.
And then Remedy are going to remake Max Payne 1 and 2.
Yeah.
And they've said they're rolling it into one title, both the remakes. So who knows what's going to be going on with that.
Yeah. I do want to ask you, because I think now's the time to do it, I think it was in the Alan Wake episode, you said you don't like it when they kind of link the properties in a unified world. When they announced that Control was in the same world as this, you kind of weren't up for that, really.
Yeah.
Has playing this game changed your mind at all?
I think it's changed my mind in as much as like I don't mind it, but at the same time I don't feel compelled to go and play Control. Like I kind of feel like I got what I needed from Control from playing it.
That's fine.
Yeah, that's
you don't have to.
This is the thing, like with these big crossover universes, it's like, oh yeah, if you want to watch Star Wars, you got to watch 10 TV shows, 10 films. It's like that's what I don't like. Is like the same with so this is going off topic now, but the TV show The Boys. By the time that I was like, oh, maybe I'll check it out, it already had 4 seasons and a spin-off show. And I was like, well, now it's too much. Like, it's too big now. Whereas this game in particular, I played Alan Wake, the 2 DLCs, the little spin-off game. I didn't play any of the Control DLC, but I kind of feel like I don't want to. Like, I'm fine with it as it is.
I watched like a plot summary before I played this.
Yeah. I don't know what happened. It's probably... Is it that much?
It's to do with the I can't remember his name. So in Alan Wake 1, you know, like the kind of care home place, the guy who you punch at the beginning. Do you remember his name?
Dr. like Brett something, or like Greg something. I know who you mean. I know who you mean.
So it's basically, it's like him has kind of turned into like this dark monster, and it's all about kind of fighting him. I think they capture him and take him into the Federal Bureau of Control. So kind of one of the links here with Control is, so the Control's all about a game where it's basically like a government agency that is the people that investigate paranormal activity, is a Control for Dummies way to summarize it. And so the Federal Bureau of Control are in this game, and kind of from the very beginning there's touches of them. There's like a monitoring station.
Yeah, they're in the monitoring station. They're like, oh, we're just checking like stuff.
Yeah, it's like, just routine maintenance. You carry on.
And then later on, when you run past it again, it's like
it's
alerting.
Flashing. Yeah. It's
and you're like, what is going on?
But later on, they are actually in the game, and I think that's a nice level. There's not many direct characters from Control, and I did play Control, and I love Control, but I got the sense that if I hadn't, I would have been absolutely fine.
Yeah, I played Control, but I didn't play the Alan Wake stuff. So, but I did see references to Control like all through the game. Like there's a part where there's a whiteboard, Sheriff Breaker. He's like filling in a whiteboard, and he starts to write about Control, like, "Oh, red-haired woman?" ? Like, and all this other stuff. But yeah, I think I like the fact that they're still kind of keeping each other at arm's length. Like, it doesn't feel like the sequel to Alan Wake 2 is going to be Control 2.
Yeah,
which I feel like sometimes with the Marvel stuff.
It all blurs into each other. And it's like, oh, this is the film or the TV show that introduces this character, and then they're going to arrive in this film, and then it's going to be like, oh yes, and I got that quantum stone that you know about. And it's like, I don't know what that is. I didn't watch that, whatever that was. I do agree with that, but I think because this game is so much about that, and because there's the Quantum Break dude is kind of in it as well.
Oh, is that Sheriff Breaker?
Yeah, Sheriff Breaker. So the actor who's the lead in Quantum Break, which is the Remedy game that they made before Control, shows up as well. So they've kind of like got everything. They got all of their toys are out on the playmat in this game.
Yeah, for sure. And also they go back and touch on stuff from Alan Wake 1 as well, obviously. One of which being his wife, who I feel like really got done dirty in the first game.
Oh yeah,
she's just in her pants the whole game.
She was the carrot on the stick.
Yeah,
that was
she
her
falls
character.
in the lake, disappears for the whole game. I feel like in this game she really gets a good character development.
Yeah, she has some of the most striking moments. So the main way you're seeing her, so this Scratch character, this evil Alan Wake, essentially, is sort of stalking her. So the idea is she's gone back to her apartment in New York. Alan Wake is in the lake, in the dark place,
in the Sand Lake.
And but then this other version is almost kind of like haunting her. And so because she's a photographer, she's kind of taking pictures and almost kind of doing art installations about this evil version of basically Alan Wake that's tracking her. And you see that, but then she's recording video messages as well. Yeah, and it's probably the best performance in the game is those video messages. They're amazing.
All of the video scenes are really good. Those in particular. Also, I found her ending, like not the end of the game, but where she ceases. I guess we can spoil. She dies. The scene where she dies was horrible, and it's not even a video; it's photographs, and it's just like so shocking. Like it was like stomach turning. Like this is just. I feel like I'm actually watching someone die. Like she basically jumps off a cliff, but it's like 4 photographs of her turning around and then walking, and the last one she's like just her shoulders and head are above the ground level, and it's like just awful.
Yeah, I made a note. I'm trying to find it was basically like the word. Basically, it's just the text that comes on screen, which is basically like the next images you're going to see of like the last
we saw of her alive.
Yeah, we saw of her alive, and that kind of gave me chills. And I think the fact that it's as I say, it's a real woman as well, and like the way it's presented so good, like that kind of almost kind of got chills again.
Yeah, I did think about it. It honestly feels like when you were like 13 and you go on the internet and it was like really dodgy and you see something you wish you hadn't seen. It feels like seeing one of those. Yeah. It's like, oh my god,
it felt so real. Like that was very touching.
Speaking of FMVs, do you have a favourite of those video scenes?
Yeah, you know what it
What? Oh, are you going to talk about the music?
Yeah.
Okay, well, quickly then, before we get into that.
My favourite
one was the Thomas Zane.
Oh, sorry, I thought you were saying
my first. Thomas Zane and Alan Wake going on their absolute bender. Like, them both getting drunk in this apartment. Then it like cuts to Alan like violently vomiting, and they're just like, there's a bit where he picks up the phone, there's no one there, and he's like, I'm writing return. Like, and I was like, this is so good. Like, honestly, the way it's shot, like it's all like funny angles, like you feel like you're there, like having this crazy night. And Thomas Zane also just a great character.
Yeah,
he was fantastic. So he is actually obviously the same actor.
Yeah,
but that's his actual voice.
Okay.
So he uses his real voice. The guy that plays Alan is voiced over.
Yeah,
but yeah, I loved that scene so much. I literally was like beaming watching them both.
No, that was and the later scene with him as well, which we probably don't need to spoil.
Yes,
was a great scene as well. Especially the bit after that scene on the projector.
Yeah, because I messed around in that room for a bit and I saw what happened afterwards, and I was like, "This is crazy."
Yeah, I don't think we don't need to spoil. I know I said this would be like we will spoil it, but there's certain things that I don't think it's necessary for us to spoil. But yeah, so the music scene, or one of the music scenes, is So is after another. So they do the talk show bit, and then later on in the game, you're kind of going through like an altered version of the area. So it basically looks like the film set for an American late night talk show. So like, kind of imagine like the staging and stuff. But then they got giant FMV versions of characters throughout the game. Sometimes Alan, sometimes the host of the show, sometimes Alex Casey, aka Sam Lake, sometimes the rock star Thor and Odin, playing the music, and you're kind of making your way through this kind of abstract version, almost like Escher painting version. Yeah,
but it has like stage directions on the floor in white tape.
Like
as if you're on the set.
And you're going through that for a while, and it's just really cool. And then once again with an original song and like really goofy, like Alan Wake, like they'll be like kind of dancing, almost like doing like the Thriller dance, and like doing like really like kind of like campy like 70s sort of style dance moves. And then the bit I thought was really cool is then suddenly you get like attacked, and then you're doing combat in that area with like all of like these giant like looks like screens going.
And it would say on the floor like wait for guitar solo.
Yeah.
And there's like enemies coming at you, and it's like this crazy guitar solo. You're like, I just want it to be over so I can carry on. Like,
it was great. People always talk about there's a moment in Control like the ashtray maze. And I think I still slightly prefer the ashtray.
Oh, really? I strongly prefer this one.
Oh, okay. I think I love the way you're moving through the ashtray, because you basically fly in Control by the end. And like they do more. This is much more about like the FMV.
He says, doesn't he? He says later on, he's like, "Oh, by the way, I tried to write a musical to get out." Yeah, because he's like trying to write his way out of this, and the person he's talking to is like, I don't even know what to say back to that. But I actually really preferred it. I think because it was just funny, and it was like warms you to the characters. It was really like watching Alan dancing and stuff.
And then at the end of it, he just goes, I didn't expect that. And I was like, it was exactly what I was thinking.
No, definitely, it's definitely a highlight.
Yeah, and then the other bit, which is kind of similar, is that the bit that we touched on a little bit earlier, where you're kind of on, was essentially a beach, but it's of a lake, I think.
See, that was the reason. I think the reason that those sort of bits make me cringe, like especially that final one, is because the characters in the game are like, "This is so awesome! I can't wait to buy a T-shirt for this event." And it's like,
but that's more Odin and Thor, who they're.
Well, no, it's the FBC woman is like, "Oh, we're breaking so many laws right now, but I don't care because it's awesome." And I was like, "Oh, so it does make me a little bit like."
So basically, what that scene is that so they need to change the outcome. They're basically trying to bring Alan Wake out. And so they need fiction. And so they're like, oh, what can we do to create it? They're like, oh, we'll get Thor and Odin to write a song about it. And then that will be the art that will be used. So that's the justification for them setting up like a rock gig on the beach. And there's also a bit of a throwback because there's a moment fighting on outside their house, like outside their farm on stage in Alan Wake 1. So I think it's a little bit of a throwback to that as well.
Yeah, also, just before we start recording, Muppet messaged me with an article on Eurogamer saying that musical section almost got cut because they were like, we're trying to make a horror game and this is silly.
In the Alan Wake 2?
In Alan Wake 2, yeah. Okay. So the section with the big screens and everything, they almost cut that whole section.
If they don't want to be silly, they've got to cut more than that. Like there's a lot of humor. So to keep on the FMV bits, they carry on their tradition where there's a lot of like TVs with like adverts on and stuff, which are like straight comedy this time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the two brothers, they called the Yako brothers?
Yeah, I made a little note. The Koskela?
Koskela brothers, yeah,
Koskela
Yako
brothers.
and Ilmo.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're kind of entrepreneurs in this little town, and they
Many
have all
different
kinds of
fields.
different things, and they make their own adverts. And they're pretty funny. Like, to be honest with you, all of the FMV stuff was really, really good. Definitely a step up from Alan Wake 1.
In Alan Wake 1, you remember me mentioning that I got the vibe of like student film?
Mm-hmm.
Like this one, like I didn't. Like, especially like things like the talk show. I was like, you can tell the cameras they're using are like proper film cameras because obviously it's very rare, I think, for anyone to watch like full like 4K footage that isn't being streamed.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was like, oh my god, this looks amazing.
Yeah,
I was like,
yeah.
so like, and it's like, so it is a step up. You know, they use the epic money wisely. Who published this game.
The crazy thing about this game, all these things we're talking about, and the budget, I'm amazed that this game even got made to the level that it's made. Like, there are a few things poking through that you can see, like, I kind of wish there wasn't as many combat encounters, or maybe they were just different. 'Cause I kind of feel like it does all these amazing things, and then when it comes down to it, you're shooting zombies. And it's like, I can kind of see like why they had to do that, but also it would be quite cool if they did something different or didn't have the...
I wonder if because I was doing more of the side puzzly stuff, I had more of like...
downtime.
Or more of like an even mix between like doing puzzle, because I was like going and doing more of the stashes and stuff. Like maybe if you're just mainlining it, is a lot more like combat. Whereas I was doing more exploring. It wasn't
like the pace of the combat. It was more like the fact that you're doing all these things, and really it just comes down to shooting zombies. And like it's doing things in games that I've never seen before, but you're still also shooting zombies, and you're always shooting zombies, and it's like that feels a little bit. This is how much I respect this game, is that feels a bit basic compared to what the rest of the game is doing.
But I don't feel, because like all of the stuff that we said about like where you're changing the plot to change like the area and using like the light and like all of like the puzzle stuff, or even just like navigating the environment, they sometimes like they don't do waypoints. They leave it up to you. They trust you. Like I know in terms of like active gameplay, like there isn't like, oh, and there's also melee combat, or there's also climbing traversal. I don't think it needs, like, I think there's like the combat is the core, but then they have enough unique wrappings in each area, or even just like exploring the area. Like one of the areas you go to is like Coffee World, which is like a coffee themed like fun fair place. And like sure, I'm walking around there and shooting zombies in there, but just seeing it all is enough. And they'll do a unique encounter where you go in and then like, the teacup starts spinning and then there's an enemy in the middle. Like, I never felt like, oh, here we go, another wave of enemies. No, which I did feel like in the first one.
It's not that. I just feel like it feels like a crutch compared to the rest of the game, the lofty things the rest of the game is doing. It's like, and also because it's a game, you shoot zombies.
Yeah, but I guess it is a game. It has to be fun. But there's enough. I feel like they gave you enough tools and variety in enemies and environments.
It's good shooting as well. It is good shooting.
Yeah, it does feel. I mean, it just feels like Ollie said about it being like Resident Evil, like the modern Resident Evils. Like it is a lot like the modern Resident Evils, which are very good.
I loved this game. I think it was an absolute unbelievable that came. The things that I struggle with are, I feel like, as I just said about the zombies, it's like, okay, they're just zombies. And the other thing is, it's so similar to Twin Peaks Season 3 that it's like, I don't want to say it's like derivative, but it's so many things are the same that it's like, but I enjoy that. So it's like, I enjoy this. But like, I could describe the plot for both and you wouldn't know which one I'm describing because they are the same. It's that bad. Even the opening is the same for both of them. And it's like, but I don't know, not everyone watched that show. And obviously,
and a lot less people watch that than the old Twin Peaks as well. So I wonder if less people are realizing that it's derivative.
Yeah, because it's even like, it's not derivative. No, it's just like heavily inspired.
I think it was less inspired by Twin Peaks directly than the first one.
No, I remember definitely more.
Well,
1,000,000%
remember
more.
The lamp lady?
Yeah,
in the diner.
So this game,
the Twin Peaks diner.
So this game starts with like this middle-aged federal agent who appears after many years of being missing, and then is killed and a part of him is removed. That's Alan Wake. Twin Peaks starts with a federal agent who appears after many years of being missing, who is killed and his head is removed. And it's like, okay, that's the same. And it's like, okay, then we send in a team with an FBI agent who's the director as a self-insert, which is the same as this game. And they have a female agent with them who's new to the series, so they kind of explain, which is the same in both.
Yeah,
and it's like, oh my god! And then it's like, okay, so we have our hero character,
and then the dark version,
and then also a third version so the dark version uses his name and face to get ill-gotten gains, but there's like a funny version with a different name, which is the same in both, because we have Thomas Zane and Dougie, and it's literally like, I cannot believe, and then also the looping nature of Twin Peaks. Like there's a lot of shots of in season 3, which by the way is also called The Return, where people like kind of glitch forwards and backwards. That's like a common thing in that happens in this game all the time as well. And also the Twin Peaks, the marriage of analog and digital is also in that. Like there's a part where you're looking through a wormhole and it's like this CGI wormhole and there's like dust landing on the camera lens. This game has that same effect. Like it is so similar. And also the evil hero, so the evil version of the hero in Twin Peaks appears in leather jacket covered in blood, and then the evil version of Alan Wake looks the same.
And like the hair's down.
The hair's down. It's literally so similar that it's like
it is very similar.
It's crazy, but I don't think it
does. I don't think overall. I think because in Twin Peaks season 3, the setting is so different. Yeah, maybe that's the thing that like it's more like you could see a screenshot of Alan Wake 1 and a screenshot of Twin Peaks season 1, and probably do more side-by-side parallels, like Log Lady instead of Black Lady, like the diner, like the police station and stuff. Like
they definitely divert as well. Like they go a different way. But for the first half, I was like, oh my god, this is crazy.
And like Twin Peaks season 3, it's like, oh, they're going to like Las Vegas or whatever.
They definitely divert off, but the similarities are.
Yeah, I'm kind of glad I didn't think, because I do get annoyed when it's getting too close to something else, and I didn't really pick up on it. Like as directly, apart from like the Dark Alan Wake, that was the one bit that I really did think about. Yeah,
and also like with, no one's probably watched Twin Peaks season 3, but the hero being trapped in like another place, all of that's just like the same. But maybe Sam Lake watched it and was like, oh, I actually see a lot of myself in this, because that show also has a similar theme of like the director being in it and it kind of being about the show itself and these loops and things like that. So,
and I've seen interviews with Sam Lake, I think they were for Alan Wake 1 or something, but and he was talking about like, oh, this is Alan Wake, it's basically inspired by like Stephen King and Twin Peaks and like that sort of setting of like this sort of small town in America, and he's like, this is quite unique for video games. Like they're saying like it's not like they're very upfront, like it's part of the plot is that it's kind of inspired by like these other creations, but for a video game, that's not really being done anywhere else in a video game.
Yeah, he's right. And he's right.
As I'm sure you know, as you're very upsetting for you as our resident Twin Peaks fanboy on the bonus points.
But yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of amazing game that was made with this budget, and obviously that the two pain points for me are those two things. But apart from that, I had a wonderful time.
Yeah, same. It completely and my graph for loving it just kept going up. Mm-hmm. Like at first I was like, okay, yeah, this feels a bit like Resident Evil and it's kind of that sort of plot. But then it was really from the first bit, like that interview bit, and like my first time playing Alan Wake, or even just like when entering the street of New York. Yeah, I mean, oh my god, this looks amazing. Like, and so different to every, because you've been mostly in the woods up until then, and then suddenly you're like right in the middle of like New York, and it looks so different. And then it's just, for particularly my tastes, it's exactly my scale of game and area, where it's not like fully open world, but you have a big enough area that I feel like I am genuinely exploring and making discoveries and using my brain, and I'm not looking at a star on the map to go here. I'm working it out. And as I said, I really did enjoy, after doing the main bit, going back to the areas and going to...
I might go and do all that. I might load up my... I've got to save for the ending,
I wonder if it would be too much of that in a row now, because I really enjoyed like, I've done the main thing in Bright Falls, now I'm going to explore the town, and like, oh, there's like this stash box here and it says about like going to the park and looking at the bed, and then you go to the park, and so I really enjoyed doing things like that. And then there's these nursery rhyme puzzles where you're kind of collecting these dolls, and it'd be like the little girl went out on the boat, and so you put her on the
so
water.
I found that, but I didn't actually.
You say you find that, there's loads of those.
Okay, well I found one of them. I didn't finish it. I just like, okay, I'll come back to that. Or something.
I think there's like 5 in each area.
But even that's like another analog art form. There's like models being made.
Yeah, like nursery
they make
rhymes.
little, But I mean, like the actual little models themselves.
Yeah. So that is the federal can't say that for some reason, Bureau of Control, the FBC. It's basically that is them kind of testing out like what is the effects of like they're writing these stories and trying to like push the boundary. So like you'd always find those with like a camera set up, and then if you often go into a house or somewhere nearby, there's a computer, and they're like, oh, like we tried putting this down here. And,
that's cool.
So there is like little lore,
and I thought in
there as well.
Finding the little notes that made Saga power up, was that like someone writing fan fiction because it's close enough to the lake it was coming true? Because the notes would be like,
the manuscript.
They'd be like, she kept firing a gun and firing it and firing it and firing it, and then you get the ability that the clip gets longer.
Yeah,
and I was like, maybe it's like a fan fiction that's close enough to this area that it's
so smart the way they tie in like your upgrades into like it being written into. Well, I think that's Alan writing into the plot that like. She's suddenly like she shot, then she shot again, and like and it allows you to like shoot quicker or something.
Do you think that maybe the game was a bit too heavy-handed with its like? I feel like it kind of was over-explaining itself a little bit with like the one way I put it to someone I was talking to about was like, I feel like the characters are going to climb out of the TV and shout, "I'm a fictional character" in my face, like because they really want you to get on board with this idea.
I was pretty on board.
I was on board too. I was on board too, but I was a bit like, you don't need to keep telling me. Like, and even Alan being like, the words I'm writing are changing the scene. It's like, I've been doing this for 15 hours, mate. Like, I know how it works now.
Kai did make fun of a few of the lines. It's like, is he a writer? Like, I get that, but like for every one of those, there are so many of like little clever lines or a genuine surprise, Like for much as I say, I was kind of would guess like, I guess that Alan that came out the lake wasn't really Alan. Much as of those, like if you told me like, what sort of scene is the next scene going to be? I have no idea. I was constantly like, I have no idea what's going to happen.
That's definitely this game's strongest thing. Is that like you have no idea what's coming up.
Yeah, and like there's like the bit when you play Alan Wake and you go to like a cinema and it's doing the thing we spoke about earlier where you like would change the scene, and I'm like, what are they going to do here? Like, what are they going to do? What are they going to do with the screen? There's like so many things that they could do. When that door
appeared on the screen, it took me so long to figure out.
Yeah, then you go through it.
Go through it.
Yeah, like it's indescribable, like the amount of moments like that.
Yeah.
And just how complete and like these moments where they're putting the FMV in, it's so pure. It fits in, like the lighting is so perfect, and like they just completely nailed the tone of it. Like
that cinema section was also like really the culmination of all of the the plot swapping scene area, and it was quite difficult, but I really liked finally figuring it out and being like, oh, this is what I'm supposed to do. Big spoiler warning now, because I want to talk about when Alan's like, I'm going into the dark place for the final time. So spoiler warning, if you are going to play it, if you haven't come off by now, definitely come out now. So he is like, I've got to go in one more time. And he drives into town and it's like dark. And he's a bit where he's shining his torch on the road. And I was like, also, I fully loved Alan in this game. I didn't really like him in the first one because he like kind of sucked. And it is a shame that they made him more likable. But I guess it's quite nice because you want to like him. But he was horrible in the first game. And then he's like, I'm going into the dark place for the final time. And you're kind of bracing for like just the absolute worst. Like the stuff you've seen in the game is bad enough. And then you go in and it's like, wonderful.
Yeah.
It's like suburbia.
It's like sunny.
Yeah.
And you haven't seen much sun.
Yeah. It's sunny. It's like there's a festival going on. And everyone is talking about the book that he's written. Which like it really calls back to the first game. Like with all the people like being like, oh, Alan, like, and then they even have the standee.
Yeah, the same cardboard
cutout. That section for me, I was like, that was almost more scary than it being horrible. Yeah. Also, did you die on that section?
Yeah, well, when they chase you.
Yeah, horrible.
Yeah. So
really
you basically
graphic.
You take the book that you wrote and then like they all turn and like chase you.
Yeah. And I like that the idea of his hell is that everyone is obsessed with the book and knows who he is, and just really creative. That was an amazing moment. The game is just full of these great moments. Like, yeah, this should be an interesting list addition.
Yeah, I'm excited about it. Are we doing lists now?
Well, we did actually get quite a lot of good questions.
Okay, shall I? I'll bring up some questions.
Here we go. Taylor Mays says, now this is the second sequel of a previous podcast game you covered. Which of the two pairs had greater development between the original and the sequel? Not which sequel was better, but which is the most developed and worked upon in comparison to its original.
I think there's an obvious answer here.
There is an obvious answer, but maybe that's because Last of Us Part 1, which says Last of Us Part 1 and 2 was the other pair we did. Maybe because that game, Last of Us Part 1, was already so high budget, highly polished.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, for one, there's a much bigger time gap between the two.
Yeah.
Definitely much bigger jump. But then, I think the fact that when we were debating on the list, we're both pretty close between The Last of Us Part 1 and Part 2. Mm-hmm. I'm assuming this one there's going to be a much bigger disparity
I'd say so.
between the two. This feels much more of an evolution of the original idea.
Yeah.
Whereas Last of Us Part 1 was just like, I mean, it's Naughty Dog. Like they make gold. Yeah. Like they nailed it first time.
The interesting thing about it being the evolution is that because I played all the DLCs and the American Nightmare, which I know you played a little bit of, but you didn't love. But maybe I feel like you didn't have a good, because you did my New Game Plus.
We played it for about an hour, and I played it with you sitting next to me, being like, "Oh, what about this?"
But you know the whole like scene setting thing.
is
from Alan Wake 2 is from that game. So I was doing that, and I was like, "This is amazing!" Like so I was doing it back then. But it's quite cool seeing the evolution of that going through.
And I cannot stress how much I love that stuff. Like that just the visual, that instant switch.
Yeah,
like I love, like, I was looking, anytime I needed to do that, I was always looking forward to it. And then there's also another bit where on the Saga side, we kind of talked about her mind place, which is once again a physical area, and that's where you go to upgrade your stuff or like rewatch like adverts or whatever. There's a bit where you kind of almost get stuck in it, where you do get stuck in it and you're trying to find your way out. And then they kind of make a puzzle out of it. And then something we didn't really mention is she's a seer, which basically means she's an empath. She can basically work things out, or like if she talks to someone, know if they're lying, and you do that by kind of like profiling them. And there's like a really cool bit where you're kind of stuck in there, and it's basically kind of tied into her, like, I guess her like negativity and self-doubt, where she's putting up on the board like basically like, I'm a bad mum, like I'm a bad thing, and you're putting, and then she's like, that's not right, and then you kind of twist it into saying like, no, actually I am a good mum, I am a good detective. And once again, what this game is always doing is it's tying its gameplay into its cinematics. And there's a load of games with great stories. For example, The Last of Us has an incredible story. You could watch a YouTube compilation of the story, and it'd be a great story.
Or the TV show.
Yeah, and or the TV show. Exactly. Yeah, and obviously the gameplay in it is also really good, and there is dialogue in the gameplay, but that stands alone as like, oh, it's just a great story, mainly told through videos, essentially cutscenes. And this isn't that. This is gameplay like so cleverly tied in with story, and I think
it's fully married, fully together.
So just for when we get to the list, like that is why it's better than the sum of its parts.
Doom Citrus asks, would you recommend playing the second game rather than the original, or should they be played together? So the other day I heard, actually on the Insert Credit podcast, they had a question that was like, what do you think about people saying, do I need to play game before, Alan Wake 1 before Alan Wake 2? Actually, no, that's a bad example. Games that have an ongoing plot, Last of Us, they're like, do I need to play Last of Us 1 before Last of Us 2? And they kind of said, like, these are massive budget games made by designers who want to appeal to the biggest audience as possible. So don't worry about playing the previous games.
That's why I was saying it's surprising for this one.
Whereas this game, you 100% need to play the first one, like, or at least know what it is, or at least know what happens in it.
A plot summary will get you a decent way of the way there. But it will you'll lose out on some of the emotional gut punches, like when recurring things, or even just like, I went back to Bright Falls and now it's in like 4K and I can walk wherever I want. Like that was a cool moment because they hold some of that stuff back. And like the first time I got to the diner and I was like, oh my God, I can look at it like properly now. Like that, it made that like mean more. But if you just watched a summary, and it's not crucial to the plot, but you'd lose out on that. Yeah. Is there a question right about that? Is that
No. There's a question about Quantum Break from Buddy Ollie I actually haven't played Quantum Break, but they've said, did you play Quantum Break? If not, now that you've talked about Remedy quite a bit on the pod, would you be up for talking about it?
I haven't played it either.
I don't feel compelled to. This is what I'm saying about Control as well. Like, I kind of feel like I got my Alan Wake fill.
Yeah, like, maybe I shouldn't be. Maybe I should judge it on my own. I know it didn't review that well. So I have played it. I played it at like an event, like a Microsoft event, where they were showing like upcoming stuff, because that was I think it still is an exclusive.
Yeah, it is, yeah. So
like I've experienced playing it, but yeah, I haven't, for some reason I haven't felt compelled to go back. Maybe I should. I mean, we wouldn't do it on the podcast because we've already done, we're done too many Remedy games as it is. Doing this game was a bit of a push for us. But maybe if there is ever a lull in game releases, which there hasn't been for 12 months, maybe that would be one I'd have a look at. Well, it's on Game Pass.
I heard as well that Lance Reddick plays a character in Quantum Break, and he was meant to play the chat show host on Alan Wake 2.
Is that the guy from Game of Thrones?
I don't know. He died recently. So
the guy from John Wick.
Maybe I haven't seen it.
Is he the guy in the? Is he in The Wire?
He's in Destiny as well. Look him up. Lance Reddick, his name is.
Yeah, I think
he played Wesker in the Resident Evil film, the newest one. Yeah, that's him. He was.
Yeah. He's in John Wick.
He was supposed to play, or was penned to play, the chat show host.
Oh, he'd have had a great voice for it.
Yeah, and also I think there was meant to be another little like, it's all interconnected.
Oh,
but then because unfortunately,
that's a shame. Yeah. The actor they did get though is great because he nails the goofy side of the character, and then there is like quite a dark scene with him, and he does nail both of them. Yeah. So, yeah.
I think we can list it.
Okay, right. Let's put it on the list. Okay, so this is going to be the 52nd entry on the list. Before we get started, because you normally do, have you got anything you want to moan about before we get going? Anything you want to move? It's been a long episode. People want to get out of here, Ollie.
No, it's fine. It's all good.
Finish the story, Ollie.
It's all good.
So, can I be bold?
Yep.
And suggest we focus in on the top 10?
Yes.
Okay.
I think so.
Okay, good. So can I, for audio listeners, I'm just going to read out the top 10. And
do you want to start from 10 and go to 1? Or?
Yeah. Okay. So this is the top 10 as it stands. It's always just quite, because it's going to change now. So this is always quite exciting when top 10 changes. So at number 10, going up, we have Slay the Spire, Humanity, Doom, Prey, The Last of Us Part 1, The Last of Us Part 2, Hollow Knight, Death Stranding, Disco Elysium, and then at the top, The Legend of Zelda, Tears of the Kingdom.
Yep.
Is as it is now.
Yep.
How would you like it to be in the future?
So I'm going to straight away say that I would put Alan Wake 2 in the top 3.
Okay.
Which I know is a big move. I think this is the best horror game ever made.
Yep.
I think there's nothing else like it, like in the gaming space. There's nothing else like it. It's kind of like, people would say, Silent Hill 2 is the best horror game ever made, or something. This is, for me now, it's this. There's nothing else comes close to this.
I'm so happy. So just before we recorded the podcast, I was talking to Kai, and I was like, this game's going to end up so high, because I loved it. Yeah. And I was like, this game's basically made for Ollie. I was like, I don't like horror games. I like Twin Peaks, but I'm not like your level. I was like, this game is made for Ollie, and I'm in a similar boat to you.
And also I like the single creative vision which this game has, and like I just like all of it. I like everything.
It's incredible. Like I was so, every time I went to play it, I was like so looking forward to being like, I just can't wait to see what is going to happen next.
So I
have no idea what is going to happen next.
If I was to arrange the top 3, I would put Zelda into 3rd, and then Disco and Alan. At the moment, maybe because I just played Alan would be at the top. That would be my dream. Would be Alan Wake at number 1, and then Disco, and then Zelda. But Disco and Alan, I just like sad middle-aged men who are trapped.
Well, you're gonna be one soon, Ollie. Your dream will come true.
So yeah, that's where I would put it. Like when I think about Zelda and Alan Wake next to each other, like there's no contest. Alan Wake is unbelievable.
Okay, so first thing I want to get out of the way is, so Zelda is done being number 1.
What?
So this is something that we've We spoke about this.
I know, but I didn't think it was coming now.
Yeah, to be fair, I wasn't sure I was going to do it now because I was like, this is going to be a long episode.
Yeah.
Maybe at the end of Survival Kids, we should have the Zelda discussion because we might have time. But we should do this now to get it sorted. So maybe I'll upload a separate video explaining why.
Yeah.
But since finishing Tears of the Kingdom and having time to think about it, I've realized how much more I prefer Breath of the Wild, and I feel like it's incredible. Like it's still one of my top 10 games of all times. Like the technical marvel that it is, the way that Ultra Hand and all of the building works is incredible. I think that the game underutilizes it, and the game that it's in isn't as... It's amazing, but it is very similar to Breath of the Wild, and the stuff that they did different, like the Sky Islands and the Depths, I thought were the weaker parts of the game. Like the soundtrack is still incredible. Like the actual ending is incredible. Like I love the boss fights. It's got some really amazing cinematics. But the rest of it, I much preferred Breath of the Wild, and it's hugely similar to Breath of the Wild. Like it's using all the same sound effects, the same artwork. Like it's so close to it. Then the fact that the stuff that they add didn't make me like it more than the original.
Yeah.
And the fact that my first time playing a game like that and like a Zelda game like that, like that blew me away. And Tears of the Kingdom, like from what they added, it wasn't able to match that.
Yeah.
Like Disco Elysium and Alan Wake 2 both blew me away in a way that Tears of the Kingdom didn't.
I agree.
So maybe I'll see what the response of this video in the comments are. Maybe I'll have to go more, because I was even contemplating doing a one-off video just discussing what should be at top, Disco Elysium or Tears of the Kingdom. So I have been making notes, but I think seeing as this is the time of putting Alan Wake on and it's in that area, we should get it out of the way. I know you already had changed your mind about Tears of the Kingdom.
Yeah, so Breath of the Wild, I almost finished, but I didn't finish it for reasons out of my control. I didn't finish it. It wasn't out of choice. Tears of the Kingdom, I got to the second dungeon that we talked about in the show, and I've not played it since. Whereas Breath of the Wild, I was like, this is amazing. So for me, the further away we get from Tears of the Kingdom, Tears of the Kingdom is an amazing game, but we're talking about top of the list here.
Yeah.
So something has to give, and
okay.
Yeah.
So I'm strongly in Disco Elysium above Alan Wake 2.
Okay. I'm fine with that.
I want them both above Death Stranding. I mean, obviously it's weird because I'm like, I want Hollow Knight higher.
Yeah,
but I think that's probably just
it's already fourth, mate.
I know. It's my
okay,
number.
So let's do this.
My number one.
Let's do this first. So this is coming out.
Yeah,
this is going up into number one.
Okay, so this is Disco Elysium is back at number one.
At number one.
Despite we having exclusive artwork about the fact it's no longer number one. How do you do it, Harry? Dubois, get down. So Disco Elysium was going number one. Alan Wake is sliding in at number two.
Yeah.
And then Tears of the Kingdom dropping down to number three.
To third, yeah. Which I'm actually quite happy about, because if Death Stranding was in second, it was in third, sorry, it'd be like our top three games are about sad, middle-aged men.
Yeah, at least we got a bright, happy game.
Yeah. So for now then, Disco Elysium, back to the top. I kind of feel like... The thing is, do you know what? Alan Wake, I love it. Unbelievable game. I don't know if I could recommend it, because it's like you have to play Alan Wake 1. Whereas Disco Elysium...
Why do you always care about recommending games?
Because that's just what I care about.
But that doesn't make a game good.
But okay, well, Alan Wake 2 is... Alan Wake 2 is partly only good because it's standing on the shoulders of Alan Wake 1, whereas Disco Elysium stands on its own.
But I don't think it is standing on the shoulders of it.
You have to play Alan Wake 1.
But I don't think that means... I think Tears of the Kingdom is standing on the shoulders
of Breath
of the Wild 1. But this is like... You know, so something that I get a lot... is like I get sent a lot on like Twitter and stuff now of like people that are like, oh, I drew a picture of you when I was like 12.
Yeah.
I'm now like 18 and in art college.
Okay.
And I've drawn the same picture again.
Yeah.
But now I'm an amazing artist.
Yeah.
And like they send me, so I get that a lot. That's not them standing on the shoulders of the original.
No,
the second one is made better because you can, if you've seen the original, it's like fun, like cool comparison.
Yeah.
But that's not like standing on its shoulders.
Maybe it's the wrong terminology, but you can't enjoy Alan Wake 2 as much if you haven't played the first one, whereas Disco Elysium exists on its own.
But Alan Wake is as good as it is because of Alan Wake 1. Like, I don't think that's a negative. Why is that a negative?
Well, in terms of being at the top of the list.
But why is that a bad thing? Like that it's building on the sequel?
Only because...
Like Last of Us Part 2 wouldn't be as good without playing the first one. That's not bad. Like, that's good.
Yeah, I just think about, like, all of a sudden it's... I don't know. Disco Elysium is like a singular thing and it just exists on its own. There's never going to be another one.
Yeah.
And Alan Wake...
Literally. I mean, there might be another game called Disco Elysium 2, but not with that team.
Alan Wake 2 needs Alan Wake 1. Same as Last of Us Part 2 needs Last of Us Part 1.
Yeah, I'm not seeing that as a bad thing, though. Like, I think that, like, it just, that is part of what makes it good, is that it's a great sequel.
So
like
what's putting Disco above Alan for you, then? Because I'd have them round the other way. For now, definitely. Maybe recency bias, but I'd have them round the other way.
I think... Disco Elysium, like, it's a little bit more unfathomable how it exists. Like, I think, like, ironically talking about writing, I think it's the best written game I've ever played out of any game. And the way that the freedom that it gives you and the openness, the uniqueness of the setting, you know, we talk about, you know, the setting of Alan Wake is unique for a video game, but it's not unique. Like, Disco Elysium feels like its complete own thing. Yeah. So I think that, like, maybe if there was like 3 games I had played that were like Disco Elysium, it would hurt it. The fact that I can't think of anything, like I can't think of a comparison to it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, Alan Wake 2 is amazing that it exists because it's so high budget. But like, that's not really...
But Disco Elysium isn't like, it isn't high budget in that way.
Yeah.
But it's like they obviously, I don't know what the development time was, but the time that was obviously spent to like put into that writing, like I just think that Disco Elysium was a completely unforgettable experience, which Alan Wake 2 is as well. We're talking about 1 and 2 here. But I feel like, as you say, once you kind of get into the bones of the gameplay, it's like Resident Evil and it's like a third-person shooter and it has that standard. It's like, whereas Disco Elysium is... Like,
Disco Elysium, you use your gun once or twice, and both times are the most hair-raising, like intense situations to go through.
Disco Elysium, it's mostly like words, and the fact that with mostly just words and some art and beautiful music, they're able to completely transport me to another world. Like, when I'm sometimes reading in bed and I play the Disco Elysium soundtrack and I hear that horn come in, and I'm like I feel different. Like I feel I feel like not even like I remember playing the game. Like I feel like I'm in another place, and it's because, you know, and what that place is basically a picture that scrolls on the screen. The fact that they were able
to like a PNG.
The fact that they were able to create that with like words and a few very basic animations, like. I think Disco Elysium is the best writing I've ever read.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Like, not like outside of video games or anything. Like, I think that is the best writing of fiction I have ever consumed.
And it's like the most compelling. Different parts of the brain.
Yeah, and I've seen like at most 10% of it. Do you reckon that's in the game? You think of all of the different parts of your brain and stuff, and the way that. I don't even want to play the game again. The fact that I have my different parts of my brain, and the fact that the ones that I happen to spec in talk to each other and will like argue and disagree or like back each other. And I'm like, how many combinations do I have? But like that one little section, which was like maybe like 8 minutes of dialogue of those talking, it feels so unique to me and my experience of it. Like, Disco Elysium is a special thing, and Alan Wake 2 is as well, and so is Tears of the Kingdom. So is everything in the top 10.
Yeah, for sure.
But Disco Elysium, to me, is the most unique.
Okay.
Yeah, you're okay with that?
Yeah, I'm fine with that. I'm happy that Alan Wake's at number 2.
Yeah, are you close with them?
Yeah, I'm close with them. Yeah, I think maybe I'm thinking Alan Wake because I've just played it.
Yeah.
But I really like... what I was looking for earlier on, I couldn't find the words, is like, I like the self-insert, like, meta-narrative that's like, here's someone who's reflecting on their own career, and that's what I really like about Twin Peaks Season 3, and you don't get that in games, really. So when it was in this game, I was like, oh, it's actually amazing. Like, I feel like Sam Lake has designed something to express himself to us and has completely done it perfectly. Like, we now understand how he's feeling. I've never even spoken to him or anything, but I understand exactly how he feels about his career. Which is just amazing. And
I, to be clear, I was not expecting it to be like top 10, let alone to like going into it. Like, so I saw, like, obviously I enjoyed Alan Wake 1, which is now 21 on the list for anyone that's wondering. Yeah. Because it's being pushed down. Sorry, Slay the Spire as well. You were short-lived in the top 10. We love you as well. So you got some big friends that you were standing next to there. I'm afraid there wasn't enough room in the top 10. Like going into it. So I saw the first gameplay demo, which I think was at the Game Awards. And I was like, oh yeah, this looks kind of like those recent Resident Evil games. I like that sort of story. Like, I will definitely play it and give it a shot. Then I watched nothing else of it. So I was completely in the dark going into playing it. And from that opening section of Saga, I was like, okay, this is exactly what I expected. I was like, oh, the caseboard thing, that's kind of killing my pace a little bit. Yeah. And I realized basically to relax a bit and not immediately go to, like, because every time it popped up that I had when I was doing it, I was like, oh, this might get a little bit annoying. Like, the shooting feels fine though, probably about as good as Resident Evil. But then from there, as I say, until the end of the game, the line of my enjoyment and my intrigue just kept going up. Yeah. To at the end, where I'd like have a 4-hour game session, and then I'd like take off my headphones and like go, whoa, like what was that? And like, and then obviously like Kai wasn't really following it, and none of my mates were playing it that I knew, and I couldn't talk to you about it, which was hurt. Like I think I said it's hurting my heart not being able to discuss this with you as I'm going through. Like what an experience, because I played it quite compact as well, basically in mostly a week, because I wasn't able to play it, like basically a week and a couple days extra. So I played like about 18 hours. Okay. So
I think I finished it in about 13.
Yeah, cause I guess I did all the side stuff, I guess. So so I put a lot of time into it in a very compact time. So I would be playing for 4 hours, 5 hours in a row. And it was incredible experience.
It was the same as, I had that same thing where in the first Alan Wake, I was like, the part where the light beam comes and then the torch like comes down the light beam, and I was like, oh, this is a weird game, and I'm on board. For me, for this one, it's the part where you put the heart through the sign.
Oh yeah,
I was like, oh okay, this game is weird. Like I was completely on board with how strange this is.
But for me, it was that moment. I know it's a Scotch and minor moment, but when you're speaking to the lady in the diner and she's like, "You live here." Oh yeah, that was the bit where I was like, that really got me into like, wait, what? Because I did genuinely think that Saga was like, oh, here is the normal person to react to the world. I didn't know how tied into it and how important she becomes. And also, we haven't spoiled it completely, and I do think you could, if you are listening to this point and now you're feeling like, oh wait, number 2, they're serious. Like
we're serious. We
honestly,
are serious.
like we would, like this podcast would have to be as long as the game for us to spoil it all. It has even if you know some of the bigger stuff, there's so many little surprises and stuff throughout. Please, if you can play horror games, because this is a scary game with jump scares, if you can play this style of game, please do. Like you will not regret it. Yeah. Bonus points, seal of approval.
Absolutely. 1,000,000%. Yeah. What is it with these sad man games that we love so much?
What is it with this year? My top 10 of the year is ridiculous. There's games that are getting kicked out my top 10. I cannot believe it.
I think it's, I mean, I'm still looking to play Baldur's Gate.
Yeah.
December 4th, apparently, maybe.
Oh, really? Have they put a date down?
They haven't said, but some leaker online said. Yeah. So maybe.
Yeah. And this is like, and Hollow Knight Silksong didn't even come out this year, and I'm glad it didn't, because I don't know what I would have done. My head would have spun in a circle with giddiness if I also got that game this year.
And we also didn't play Spider-Man.
Yeah, no, I'm also keeping a list of the giant games that I haven't played, just to preempt the comments of people saying, "What about this? What about that game?" Like, so there's so many huge.
Do you know what? I don't feel like we've actually done this game justice, because it's so good, and we haven't. I just haven't, like, you can't talk about how good it is. Like,
I think you need to just see it and hear it. It's such a visual, audible experience.
And it's so intense. Like, you feel like you're sitting across from a Psycho. Like, you're sitting across the table from a Psycho for the whole thing. It's like, I have no idea what they're going to do. I don't know what's going to happen next. Like, and I'm on edge because I'm sitting opposite someone that is like completely unhinged. Like the moments where characters are literally just staring down the camera at you, and all you can do is hold the button down to like stare back at them. And it's like, it's horrible, but it's amazing. But it's like so unnerving. And there's 2 DLCs coming.
Yeah.
Can't wait for this.
And also, I want to give a little shout out to friend of the show, Eric Sturpey, who, of course, was on when we discussed The Dig, who is the lead writer of Control 2, which is part of this same universe. So if you're watching this, Eric, you got a big act to follow here. Yeah. But I mean, I in particular really loved Control, so I do prefer Alan Wake 2. I think overall, definitely overall.
This is their masterpiece. This is Remedy's masterpiece.
This is I think their peak. But like, I mean, Control is also incredible. So I am like that would be I would be doing the equivalent of a midnight launch of that. I will be preloading that, and I mean, maybe there'll be enough of a gap we could justify doing it on the podcast. I don't know. Maybe.
Why don't we just change to a Remedy podcast? I mean, I'm more excited for the Max Payne. I like Max Payne, so I'm more excited for those remakes, and also now intrigued to see if they try and do anything to merge them. I mean, fine if they don't.
There'll be Easter eggs for sure. There'll be a TV show or something.
Yeah.
There'll be a deer head on the wall. Did you ever pet the deer heads?
I did.
A bit weird.
Of course I did. Yeah.
Anyway, so that's Alan Wake 2.
It's a long old episode, this one, isn't it?
Yeah, Alan Wake 2, number 2 on the list, which is pretty unbelievable. But well done to Alan and crew. Slay the Spire sadly was sacrificed and kicked out top 10. As I said, Alan Wake, the original, is now at 21. So the top 5, as it stands now, is at number 5, Hollow Knight.
Yep.
At number 4, Death Stranding.
Yep.
At number 3 is Tis the Kingdom. At number 2 is Alan Wake 2. And at number 1 is Disco Elysium.
I can't believe Disco's back at the top.
Yeah. After we made such a big thing
Alan couldn't even take it from Disco.
It became inevitable. Like you were quite before me sure of that.
Yeah.
And I'd been umming and ahhing it. And to be honest, I was just a little bit scared about saying it after all of the praise we gave it. But it's still at number 3 of these games and top 10 of my personal list. So it's hardly been kicked to the gutter, has it?
No, not at all.
Anyway, I see you're poised with future game releases.
Yes, I got my phone out for future podcast episodes. 1st of December, 2 weeks from now, we have Survival Kids, which is a Game Boy Color game. What are you laughing at? It's your choice. What are you laughing at?
I just can't believe we're doing these games back to back. I've not played it yet, so
I've played it.
It's a Game Boy Color game.
Game Boy Color game.
By Konami.
Yeah.
Talking too much today.
If you can find a way of playing it, it is literally less than 1 megabyte. So if you want to download it, you can.
It'll be much smaller than even one of those flash screens that come up for a jump scare.
I think it's a 5-hour playtime.
Okay.
Well. Yeah, so I've heard. So that's the next game we're doing. Then in December we're going to do Game of the Year and the Christmas quiz. I should think, because we're not set in stone yet, we're doing both of those. I should think the Christmas quiz is coming on the 15th of December, and then the Game of the Year is coming on the 29th.
Okay.
But in the meantime, we also are on Patreon, and the reason I bring that up is because we have another series called Extra Credit, which is on every other Friday. So every week you're not normally getting a podcast, you get Extra Credit. We've had a huge influx of new users. I guess new Patreons, users, I'm in work mode. New Patreon subscribers joining game nights. We've had loads of game nights recently. We've had Halo, Overwatch, Mario Kart. We've got Fortnite coming up by the time this is up. Fortnite's already done. But there's loads of stuff going on in there. There's a book club in there as well. You can join the book club. It's super cool. And yeah, because it is gated, there's a Discord too, which is gated. It means everyone's really nice. So
yeah. And also big thank you because we tend to be doing older games or games on Game Pass and stuff. Obviously, this is a game that's just come out, brand new game. And so it was bought through the money from Patreon. That's the sort of stuff like the money goes to. And it just means that, it's when we're picking our game, we're not having to really think about that so much. So once again, thank you for patrons for buying us Alan Wake 2 and enabling this podcast. So if it isn't clear, all of the money from Patreon is just going towards this. It's not paying for our time or anything. It's just paying for any gear we need to get or any music or Ollie's train tickets to come down
train tickets here,
in order to record this stuff. So our goal is to hopefully in the future get us set up to do more stuff in person. So fingers crossed that will happen. So thank you all so much if you are one of the recent users of our Patreon.
Yeah, that's work talk coming through. Yeah, thank you guys. And thank you, Joe, for sorting out this in real life setup test.
Yeah. It looks very simple. We spent about a day working out the setup of, 2 mics and a laptop. Why didn't we think of that earlier?
Right.
So
we won't bore you with the details, but it was surprisingly complex.
we know it's probably not quite as good audio quality as normal. Like when we do hopefully have a permanent setup, we will dress it up like if you think of what Blood Brothers is, hopefully we'll do an equivalent of that for the podcast. That is the goal. But anyway, this has been a very long podcast. Thank you so much, Ollie, for choosing this game. And forcing it in as well, because we weren't going to be doing this game, and you were like, "Shall we switch it with Survival Kids?" And I was on the fence
because you love Survival Kids. You knew it was going to be number 2. So
I just knew everyone was rushing out to buy it, and I didn't want to disappoint them. People were queuing up at CEX saying, "Have you got Survival Kids? Is it back in stock
and
yet?"
CEX like, "Yeah, we got it. It's £400 because they don't overprice all that old stuff."
So thank you so much for choosing it. Thank you all so much for watching or listening. Go play Alan Wake 2, and we'll see you later. Bye.
Cheers. Bye. Oh, that was weird. Joe?